Okay folks, welcome to part 2 of the presidential debates video. I'm now going to show you a video again involving Ronald Reagan. This one's from 1984. Reagan at this time was the oldest sitting president America has ever had, and there were some issues about his age and did he fall asleep in the afternoon and stuff. So here we're going to see how this was dealt with when it came up in the debate, and again it shows the importance of using humour in these debates. So enjoy this.
Mr. Truitt, your question to President Reagan.
Mr. President, I want to raise an issue that I think has been lurking out there for 2 or 3 weeks and cast it specifically in national security terms. You already are the oldest president in history, and some of your staff say you were tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. I recall yet that President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuba Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Apparently Walter Mondale later has said that's when he knew he'd lost the election, following that witty aside by Reagan. So it shows how humour is a really potent weapon in these sorts of debates. Okay, as I was saying earlier on, very often the debates kind of confirm what people already think of candidates. And here we're going to see part of Bill Clinton with George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., who was the sitting president. In the middle, by the way, someone called Ross Perot. He was an independent billionaire who's the only time a third party has ever been to one of these debates, and that was because he was scoring, above 15% in the opinion polls. Anyway, this was a town hall style debate, and this particular question and response from George H.W. Bush kind of confirmed what a lot of people already thought of him, i.e. being a little bit out of touch, possibly even a little bit arrogant as well. So let's have a look at this debate.
Right here. Yes. How has the national debt personally affected each of your lives? And if it hasn't, how can you honestly find a cure for the economic problems of the common people if you have no experience in what's ailing them?
Well, I think the national debt affects everybody. Obviously, it has a lot to do with interest rates. It has.
She's saying you personally.
On a personal basis, how has it affected you?
Has it affected you personally?
Well, I'm sure it has. I love my grandchildren. I want to think that they're going to be able to afford an education. I think that that's an important part of being a parent. Maybe I won't get it wrong. Are you suggesting that if somebody has means, that the national debt doesn't affect them?
Well, what I'm saying,
I'm not sure I get it. Help me with the question and I'll try to answer it.
I've had friends that have been laid off from jobs.
Yeah.
I know people who cannot afford to pay the mortgage on their homes, their car payment. I have personal problems with the national debt. But how has it affected you? And if you have no experience in it, how can you help us if you don't know what we're feeling?
I think she means more the recession, the economic problems today the country faces, rather than the
you ought to be in the White House for a day and hear what I hear and see what I see and read the mail I read and touch the people that I touch from time to time. I was in the Lomax AME Church. It's a black church just outside of Washington, D.C. And I read in the bulletin about teenage pregnancies, about the difficulty that families are having to make ends meet. I talk to parents. I mean, you got to care. Everybody cares if people aren't doing well. But I don't think it's fair to say you haven't had cancer, therefore you don't know what it's like. I don't think it's fair to say, whatever it is, if you haven't been hit by it personally, but everybody's affected by the debt. Because of the tremendous interest that goes into paying on that debt, everything's more expensive. Everything comes out of your pocket and my pocket. So it's that. But I think in terms of the recession, of course you feel it when you're president of the United States. And that's why I'm trying to do something about it by stimulating the export, investing more, better education systems. Thank you. I'm glad to clarify.
Tell me how it's affected you again.
You know people who lost their jobs,
yeah.
lost their homes?
Uh-huh.
Well, I've been governor of a small state for 12 years. I'll tell you how it's affected me. Every year, Congress and the president sign laws that make us do more things and gives us less money to do it with. I see people in my state, middle-class people, their taxes have gone up in Washington and their services have gone down, while the wealthy have gotten tax cuts. I have seen what's happened in this last 4 years when, in my state, when people lose their jobs, there's a good chance I'll know them by their names. When a factory closes, I know the people who ran it. When the businesses go bankrupt, I know them. And I've been out here for 13 months, meeting in meetings just like this, ever since October, with people like you all over America. People that have lost their jobs, lost their livelihood, lost their health insurance. What I want you to understand is the national debt is not the only cause of that. It is because America has not invested in its people. It is because we have not grown. It is because we've had 12 years of trickle-down economics. We've gone from 1st to 12th in the world in wages. We've had 4 years where we produced no private sector jobs. Most people are working harder for less money than they were making 10 years ago. It is because we are in the grip of a failed economic theory. And this decision you're about to make better be about what kind of economic theory you want. Not just people saying, I want to go fix it, but what are we going to do? What I think we have to do is invest in American jobs, American education, control American health care costs, and bring the American people together again.
Okay, so you can see on that video there, you could just see how good Clinton was at dealing with that person's issue, really kind of addressing their concern, whereas President Bush kind of appeared kind of out of the loop on what, isn't he? He didn't quite get what the question was, didn't really have a very good response to it. So again, it kind of confirmed what people already thought of the two men. They already thought that Bill Clinton was quite empathetic. They thought that George H.W. Bush was quite arrogant and perhaps a bit out of touch. Okay, in this next one, it's only quite a short one. This is Vice President Al Gore tried to intimidate George Bush. I heard on the radio yesterday or the day before, Karl Rove, who was George Bush's big advisor, had noticed by watching Al Gore in previous debates during the primaries and just in terms of his past career, he'd noticed that Al Gore often kind of went into people's personal space doing debates, and so they kind of rehearsed what Bush's response would be if he did it. And again, this kind of again confirmed what people thought of Al Gore. They thought he was a bit arrogant, thought he I won't say quite bullying, but kind of quite dominating in many ways. So it's only a quick short one.
I specifically would like to know whether Governor Bush will support the Dingell-Norwood bill, which is the main one pending.
Governor Bush, you may answer that if you'd like, but also I'd like to know how you see the differences between the two of you, and we need to move on.
Well, the difference is that I can get it done. That I can get something positive done on behalf of the people. That's what the question in this campaign is about. It's not only what's your philosophy and what's your position on issues, but can you get things done? And I believe I can.
All right. What about the Dingell-Norwood bill?
Okay, so you can see there how Al Gore kind of going to the
I
personal
specifically
space.
would like to know whether Governor Bush...
Thought I'd stop that. Okay, this final one is the Clinton-Trump show from last time round, 2016. I haven't put on the one for another day. This is just some highlights, as you can see, from The Guardian. So we've got just about enough time to look at some of these.
I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in...
You called it the gold standard.
I hope...
You called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the facts.
And look at her website. You know what? It's no different than this. She's telling us how to fight ISIS. Just go to her website. She tells you how to fight ISIS on her website. I don't think General Douglas MacArthur would like that too much.
The
The next segment, we're continuing
Well,
the
at
subject
least
of
I have a plan to fight
achieving
ISIS.
prosperity.
No, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do.
No, we're not.
See, you're
No,
telling
we're
the
not.
enemy everything
We
you
are-
want to do.
we
No
are
wonder
not
you've been fighting. No wonder you've been fighting ISIS your entire adult life.
Folks,
Go to the fact checkers. Get to work.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns, and that's against my lawyers. They say don't do it.
Well, I think you've just seen another example of bait and switch here. So you've got to ask yourself, why won't he release his tax returns? And I think there may be a couple of reasons. First, maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Second, maybe he's not as charitable as he claims to be. Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So he has a long record of engaging in racist behavior. And the birther lie was a very hurtful one. You know, Barack Obama is a man of great dignity, and I could tell how much it bothered him and annoyed him that this was being touted and used against him.
First of all, I got to watch, in preparing for this, some of your debates against Barack Obama. You treated him with terrible disrespect. And I watched the way you talk now about how lovely everything is and how wonderful you are. It doesn't work that way. So when you try to act holier than thou, it really doesn't work. It really doesn't.
You had supported the war in Iraq before the invasion. What makes your
I
judgment?
did not support the war in Iraq.
2002.
That is a mainstream media nonsense put out by her, because she, frankly, I think the best person in her campaign is mainstream media.
My question is, since you
would you like to
supported it,
hear?
why is your
I was
why is your
against the war.
judgment-
Wait a minute. I was against the war in Iraq, just so you put it out.
The record shows
And
otherwise.
The record
but why
does not show that.
Why is your
The
judgment
record
any?
shows that I'm right.
Earlier this month, you said she doesn't have, quote, a presidential look. She's standing here right now. What did you mean by that?
She doesn't have the look. She doesn't have the stamina. I said she doesn't have the stamina. And I don't believe she does have the stamina. To be president of this country, you need tremendous stamina.
Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents, an opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina.
The world, let me tell you.
Okay, so you get the general gist of the Trump-Clinton show. Has Trump really changed that much from the last debates? I'll leave that up to you. So what you need to do is complete those bits in the booklet. Okay, there is some overview of them in the Bennett book. There's some questions at the end about the 2012 debates, because Obama performed really badly in the first one, and it actually did lead to a bit of a slump in his opinion poll rating for the only time in the campaign. And again, it highlights those points in the textbook as well, and then asks you to think about what impact do you think these debates have on the actual outcome of the election? Do they have an impact or not? Okay then, so I'll leave you with that then, and I will look forward to seeing you or hearing you, whichever bubble you're in, next week.